Former Congresswoman and ex-Democrat Tulsi Gabbard slammed Democrats on Wednesday over their policy towards transgender athletes playing in women's and girls' sports. Gabbard, who left the Democratic Party in October, was in South Dakota campaigning for Governor Kristi Noem. She slammed the Biden administration's policy denying federal school lunch funding to institutions that refused to accept their Title IX guidelines. Though she ran for the Democratic Party presidential nomination in 2020, Gabbard has spent the midterms campaigning for Republican candidates and urging voters to reject Democrats.
Balance is having a strong governor who says, no, you're not bringing that stuff to our state. And when they use, there's a couple of tricks that they always use to try to get people to do what they want. Well, if you don't do what the federal government says, then they're going to take money away. And some people fall for that. Not Kristi Noem. The latest ploy that they're using in this is, this is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Legislation that was literally enacted out of a recognition of a difference between the male and female sex. That's why it was created, and it was celebrated by people who were championing women's rights and equal rights. Well, now, 50 years later, as so many women and girls have benefited from the enactment of Title IX, they're trying to bypass Congress, backdoor a rule change through the Department of Education to take away the definition of who we are as women through our schools, by inserting gender identity in that. So anybody who wants to be a woman or a girl can be. If schools refuse to comply, the federal government is saying, we're going to take the money that we have promised you to feed hungry children in schools who qualify for free and reduced lunch, we're going to take that money away. This is just one of many examples of the insanity that we see coming from the federal government. This party that claims to be the party of compassion, the party that fights for the most vulnerable, the most helpless among us, they are leveraging the poorest, most vulnerable in our kids to push and force compliance of this radical agenda. This is what's at stake. So we cannot sit on the sidelines and think, well, what happens in Washington and stays there. All those crazy politicians, they just keep doing what they want. At least we got something good here in South Dakota. You will only have that so long as you have a strong governor who is holding the federal government at bay and not allowing this insanity to come into your state. And so this is the message that I hope you carry with you to your friends, your coworkers, people you go to church with, people who you know may have decided, I don't know if I want to vote for Kristi Noem again. Tell them why it is important that she be allowed to continue to serve and lead and fight for you and for your children and your families, and upholding these freedoms that every one of us hold dear. Because if not, there is such a great contrast between Jamie Smith and Kristi Noem. If you don't stand up and allow her to continue to fight for you, you'll end up with someone who ends up opening the doors wide open to whatever the Democrat leadership in Washington wants to force here in South Dakota. This is not one of those elections where it's like, all those politicians, they all sound the same. It's just different shades of the same color. We've been through those elections before, right? Not this time. Not this time, and not with Kristi. She is her own person. She is a woman of faith. She is someone who has fought for her family, her community, and her state for so long. She has stepped up when others refused to. In the absence of leadership, she has shown the kind of courage that we need for such a time as this. But people like Kristi can't do this alone. The change that we need to see across our country right now requires every single one of us to take ownership and responsibility for our future. If we want to celebrate freedom, each and every one of us needs to step up and take action. if we want to ensure that this country we love remains for our kids to be able to grow up in and thrive, each and every one of us needs to step up and take action. Those first three words that our founders chose to use in the Declaration of Independence were very intentional. We the people. We the people. It wasn't those other guys in Washington. It wasn't, yeah, okay, whoever you select to live in the governor's house and we just get to sit back and watch things play out. No. They chose those words as a timeless, powerful call to action to every single one of us. That in order to maintain this country we love, to uphold these freedoms we hold dear, we the people must act to ensure our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people.